Welcome to episode 10 of Mental Master, where I interview the world's greatest minds on what it takes to live an epic life. I'm your host Max Weigand, and today I'm joined by Drs. Sunil, Saxena, author of the Amazon bestsellers Massive Action Equals Massive Results and 30 Days to Awesome. After graduating from medical school at 23, Sunil decided to change directions and launch a career as a professional actor and comedian. He then went on to start 6 successful businesses in various industries and now teaches people the massive action lifestyle and what it actually takes to live an intensely awesome life. So, Sunil, welcome to the show.
Thank you, Max. I'm excited to be here.
Really excited to have you. So first question, how scared were you to tell your parents, hey, I just graduated from medical school, but actually I want to become an actor and comedian?
That's actually a great question. Great intro question, Max. Yeah, I mean, I come from an Indian background, and I know a lot of Indian folks like to be doctors. So I started very young in the program. When I was 17 when I started the program, and I graduated when I was 23 with an MD degree, which is super young. I think a little bit too young. And yeah, my parents, they didn't really push me into it, but they said, hey, you know, there's this medical program you want to do, or it's available in Ohio where I grew up. And I said, yeah, sounds good. I want to be a doctor. That's great. So there wasn't like a lot of thought that went into it. It wasn't like a lot of, I didn't really engineer my life. I just kind of fell into it a little, I guess, if you want to say it that way. And yeah, I think when I told them that I am no longer going to be doing this, they were surprised. And believe it or not, they're still surprised.
Still to this day?
My mom still tells me that I should go back and go back to medicine, even though I'm extremely happy with what I'm doing right now. So yeah, it was a little bit of a shock for them, and I think it's still
was there ever a
shock.
time where you look back and you were like, hey, maybe I should have stayed with that path, or were you always sure like, hey, this is the right thing to do?
No. I think a lot of people ask me, do I regret going to medical school? Because obviously you put a lot of time. I mean, I did 4 years of medical school and 4 years of residency, and I practiced for about 8 years. So whatever that is, 12 years, I think, if you add it up. No, I really don't regret doing it. And I really don't ever have a desire to go back, maybe on a very, very part-time basis. But I think once you find what you really love in life, it's a different world. And then you can live that insanely awesome life. And, you know, what I always say is that the insanely awesome life it's different for everybody. You know, that definition is different for everybody. So you have to find what that means to you and then pursue it. And I think a lot of people are caught up in doing things that they probably shouldn't be doing.
So do you feel like you're living like your insanely awesome life now? Do you feel like you're doing this thing that you're meant to do?
Absolutely. I don't know. I don't think I talk about it in my first 2 books, but I have an upcoming book where I talk about the concept of Dharma. And essentially it's a 3,000-year-old concept that comes from, you know, Hindu philosophy, but it really means what you were put in this earth to do. It's a little bit of a complex concept. I'm writing an entire book about it, but really, I think once you find that, like once you find what you were meant to do, that's what you should stick with and bring you the most amount of happiness. And yeah, I think I finally found what I was do. So here I am doing it.
So walk me through that timeline. So you graduated at 23. You then became an actor and comedian in your mid-20s. What was that like? Were in any popular movies or anything?
Well, no, I graduated when I was 23. I was living in New York doing the acting comedy thing, like 24, 25, only about 2 years. And I think, you know, interestingly, I look back on that time and I was probably scared, to be honest. And I kind of felt like, you know, the financial pressure of, I've got to support myself. I just didn't have a lot of support around me that was encouraging me.
Yeah.
Again, my parents were like, hey, go back to medicine. And I guess that's something I do regret. At that time, I probably should have stayed with it maybe for 5 or 10 years. And I probably would have, you know, I think achieved a lot more in that area. But really what happened is I guess I'll be honest, like I kind of got scared at that point, and I made some decisions probably out of fear. And I went back to medicine and finished my residency in my late 20s at that time. And then I got married, and then of course started practicing medicine. And then, you know, I think once you get married and start having kids, you look pretty young. So I don't think you're quite there yet. I don't think. But once you
not yet. But I guess the money part starts playing a role into that then, right? Like once you have family and people to take care of.
Yeah. It's hard just to say, hey, I'm going to go be an actor and just, you know, hopefully I'll make money in 10 years kind of a thing. You need to like pay the rent today or whatever, pay your mortgage today. Exactly. So yeah, I think that's, I think that kind of took me in that direction. But again, I don't really regret anything, but I think maybe having stayed with that a little bit longer at that time would have been a good thing.
Oh, for sure. And the interesting thing is now that you work as a public speaker and train people like that, you can actually use some of those things like we talked about before, like of being a comedian and like practicing those things early in your career. Now you can use them and finally use them to your advantage to become a better speaker. So that's kind of like an interesting.
Yeah. I think anything you ever do in your life is never a waste because you always learn something out of it. And you're absolutely right. I mean, I always try to bring comedy and the comedic element as much as possible talks. I find it a little bit hard sometimes because when I'm focused on serious topics, I like to try to like really get the point across. But I think when you use humor, it does get the point across. It helps people accept the information because they're in a better mood, versus just some dry speaker just talking.
Oh, for sure. And also like, yeah, for sure. And you also, in one of your blog posts, you talked about how stories have such a bigger impact than simply giving information, just because as human beings, we're wired kind of to listen to stories.
Absolutely. If anybody's out there that wants to be a speaker, just really is telling stories is really what it is, because that's what people remember. If you look at, the Bible or any religious text, essentially they're just a compilation of stories. And that's how people for generations, for thousands of years have kind of conveyed information. So yeah, absolutely. It's if you're any kind of speaker, the importance of stories.
So what point did you decide then to get into entrepreneurship?
I guess looking back on it, I was always an entrepreneur at heart. That's kind of what I was meant to do. Even when I was like 17, 18, I was kind of going through that medical program. I still remember thinking about, wow, it would be cool to have this business or it'd be cool to have that business. But I was so engrossed in that, medical training program that you thought about it for 5 seconds and you went right back to what you had to do.
I guess you had too much stuff to do.
You're too busy. So yeah, I think that's what I've always been. Then once I graduated, I kind of that entrepreneurial whatever bug, it kind of kept percolating. I was like, I got to do some kind of business, and I've always kind of had some sort of business. So it's it's something I think it's just part of me.
That's cool. And you actually had 6 different businesses, right? That you successfully started. So what were like some difficulties during that time? Because when you go into like a different arena, I mean, I know you did things like restaurants, for example, but then also real estate and medical devices. So how did you manage to kind of learn all these different areas at the same time?
Well, I like my bio says, or like you mentioned, I've had 6 successful companies, but I didn't mention how many unsuccessul companies I've had. So I haven't mentioned that. So
how many were there?
A lot more than 6. So I think I think I have a blog post out there as well. Or I'm can't remember if I actually talk about it in one of my books or not, but I know I have a blog post about, failure has a negative connotation, but to me, it's like it's an ingredient for success. If you want to be successful, you have to fail. There just is no other way about it. My son is 14 now. He's a competitive golfer, and we just played a tournament yesterday, and he essentially had a tournament. But you can call it a failure, but really, if you take it in the right context, it's experience, and that's what makes you successful the next time. If you take it as a failure, then that's going to really drive you down and say, oh, I failed and I'm no good at this and all those kind of thoughts. So, I think you mentioned I did restaurants, and I'll be honest, that was a failure for me.
Okay.
The business did not go well. But again, when I look back on it, when I was successful in business, everything I learned during those quote unquote failures is why I was successful later. So I don't know if that makes sense, but it's almost to me like I look at if you're baking a cake, right? I guess you don't absolutely need it. You need flour and sugar and things like that. You have to have those ingredients. So to me, in order to be successful, you have to have failure. If you don't have failure, you just can't be successful.
I think what it reminds me of is like a kind of growth mindset. I don't know if you've heard of it by Carol Dweck, right? Amazing book, which talks about like kind of fixed mindset versus growth mindset. When you have the growth mindset where you are able to take challenges and adversity and failures and view them as learning opportunities, that's actually when you're going to succeed in the long run, because then anytime you fail, you're actually able to take those lessons from that, right? You're able to kind of look at it, look backwards and see like, what did I learn? What can I take away from this? What can I do better? What did I do well? And taking all of these lessons and then applying them next time is going to make you better ultimately.
Absolutely. For people who are, I guess, younger, I consider people in their 20s and 30s young now. I don't know. That's crazy for me.
You haven't looked that old yet, but
I'm like, wow. When I was in my 20s, I was like 40. Oh my God, that's so old. But I'm in my 40s. So, but yeah, I think again, when you're young and you fail, I think a lot of people take that as a negative and it dry down. I failed. I'm no good at this. But Yeah, I think there is no such thing as really failure. I think it's kind of a bad word. You shouldn't even think of it that way. It's really, when you set a goal, you either accomplish your goal or you get called experience, right? If you don't meet your goal, you're going to get something called experience, which is extremely valuable. And I'm a perfect example. I've done so many different things. And when I look back I had when I first started I live in the Washington, D.C. area, but when I first moved here, I started like a painting and remodeling company. And it was fairly successful, but I realized it wasn't my long-term, like this is what I wanted to do long-term. But then what I realized is a lot of the like marketing and advertising principles I learned during that time, I applied almost a decade later to another business I started. So it wasn't like a failure because the business, I ended up selling the business. So it wasn't even a failure by, I guess, definition of failure, but it wasn't like a long-term path for me. And some people could have said, oh, I wasted my time doing it. I shouldn't have been doing it. But I'm like, you know what? That experience I got then is why I was successful 10 years later. So I look at failure as completely different. I look at it as a positive, to be honest. Every time I fail, I'm like, yes, I failed, So, I think that's a very important lesson that you got to, the earlier you can learn that, the better off you'll be. Because as you go through life and have, again, quote unquote failures, you'll look at them as positives, and it'll drive you forward instead of driving you down and making you quit or whatever. I
love that. I think it was Steve Jobs, right, that said, like, you can't connect the dots looking forward. You can only connect them looking backwards. So sometimes years later, you can look back at your life and realize, like, hey, this prepared me for exactly this challenge that I have right now, exactly this opportunity that I have right now. So really viewing failure as a learning opportunity, I think, is so powerful.
No, absolutely. I'm a huge fan of Steve Jobs. I wish he was still here. Anybody out there, read his book, study his life, because that's exactly what he talks about. And I don't know if you know that story where he talked about the calligraphy class he took in college, right? He just randomly took a class and thought it was kind of cool, and had no idea. And then 10 years later, he was developing fonts for the Mac, and that's why we have fonts today, because he took a calligraphy class. So you never really know. That's why even people ask me, like, medical school, waste of your time and all that. I'm like, nothing in life is a waste of your time. No matter what you do, you gain something out of it. So as long as you do it with a positive attitude, and as long as, again, you don't, if you don't get the outcome you're looking for, don't view that as a failure. View that as experience. If you have that mindset, you're going to be like miles ahead of everybody else.
I was really intrigued because in one of your books, you mentioned that in 2015, you realized you hadn't reached your full potential yet. And that was at a time when you had already started 6 successful companies, you had a family with 4 kids, you were a medical doctor, you had all of these things, but somehow you still realized that there was so much more potential inside of you. So how did you get to that realization?
Well, I think that's interesting. Again, I think a lot of people that kind of get into their 40s or whatever, around age 40, they've achieved, again, family, maybe a successful career. But to me, it goes back to that concept of Dharma, which is like why you were put in this earth. And to me, I think I was put in this earth to be kind of in front of an audience, to help people, I just thrive when I'm kind of in front of people and able to, like, provide some sort of value, whether it's a comedian helping them laugh, or whether there's a speaker helping them learn something that might, impact the rest of their life. And I guess I never got clear on them. That's exactly what I was meant to do. And now that I'm clear on it, I just focus on only something that is within that ball game, or whatever you want to call it, that arena. Because I guess before I was always focusing on, oh, this is a great business, let's go do it. Although it never really was what I was meant to do. So I think it's hard to explain. Maybe I don't know if I'm being clear here or not, but I think step one in life is really figuring out your Dharma, why you were put in this earth. And once you figure that out, you stay in that lane and you will be ultra successful. But I think a lot of people, they just get into a job or a situation, and then they just kind of, hey, working, they're making money. It's not too bad, quote unquote, but not really like alive inside and really pursuing their passion. So I don't know if that makes sense, but that's kind of where I was at. I was kind of like, I like what I'm doing. I'm happy. I'm successful, but it's not really fulfilling me inside. And I did a lot of work. I actually have a life coach I work with myself, and we will figure out that, this is really my Dharma or my passion. And now that I'm staying in that lane, I feel like I'm doing very well and really, like, fulfilled inside as well.
Wow, that's amazing that you were able to really focus on the Dharma, like you call it, or purpose of like, what is it that like I want to bring to this world, and then actually go into that and make that happen. I love that.
Right. I have a good friend who actually, we have coffee or lunch every once in a while, and he's a great guy. He's different than me, but he's a government. He's got a government job, has a wife and kids, a standard story everybody has in DC. Everybody here works for the government. Like every third person works for the government. But his true passion is like he loves to go on like those those like medical missions to help underserved. He just really thrives in an environment. So he's trying to find ways that to still, of course, support his family, but do more of that type of work. So I think he's another example of someone who probably got into the government business and whatever, not business, but a job just because he had to support his family and all those type of things. But his true passion or his Dharma lies somewhere else. So I would say 90% of people I meet are probably in that boat where they are probably doing something just to kind of make money, so to speak, but they're really not pursuing their inner passion, which is, tough sometimes, but I think that's really what everyone should be doing, and that's really what kind of brings you alive and makes you look forward to every day instead of like, oh, I got to go to work tomorrow. So it's that's what it took me 40 some years to figure that out, but I think I finally got it.
Yes. So for someone that is in a situation that you were in a few years ago, where they want to make a shift, they know like they're not really passionate about what they're doing.
Right.
What would you say is like the first step they can take towards like changing kind of their career, or at least moving into the right direction?
I always say, again, your very first step is figuring out your Dharma, which is you were put in this earth, and that does take some time. It's not like you're just going to wake up tomorrow. Oh, this is it. I think working with maybe a life coach or somebody like that to help you really think through these issues is important. But I would say that's step one. Really, that's it. And then of course, step two is take massive action, which is what my book is about. Is that once you figure that out, then really take massive action to make it happen. And I can tell you, it's difficult because once you've spent, let's say, 10 years in one field, or you've got some level of you've kind of climbed the ladder a little bit in one area, it's hard to kind of shift over and do something different. I was able to do it, but I know a lot of doctors who were friends of mine who they really honestly are not happy being physicians, but they don't feel they have a choice. They just are they feel like they're stuck in that world. But I believe very differently. I think you should never settle. You should always go for your passion. Always, really try to improve and be better. But again, not everybody thinks that way. So,
well, amazing that you did that then. And so you mentioned the massive action lifestyle before. Can you tell me a little bit more about that?
Yeah, again, I think that, once you've set a goal or you figured out whether it's a big goal, like, hey, I want to change my career, or like one of my recent goals, believe it or not, is for 10 years, I've always wanted to be a good dancer, you always go to these clubs or like a event and you can't dance and you feel kind of awkward for like 10 years. Like, I got to do it. So I don't consider it a huge life goal. I just consider it maybe a small goal for me right now. Because I'm not looking to be like on Dancing with the Stars or anything like that. I just want to like not look bad when I dance. So that's one thing I'm pursuing now. And I just, to me, it's like once you've decided to do that, just take massive action, do everything you can. Take classes, listen to podcasts like this, read books, do whatever it takes to make that goal happen as quickly as possible. So that's what I'm doing with my dance, which is, again, on a social level. It's not taking over my life, but I think, I just think it's important to kind of, once you've decided to do something, just do everything in your power to make that thing happen. And I think a lot of people say, oh, well, I want to do something, but then they just kind of, they'll kind of dabble, they'll put like one foot in a little bit, but they won't really commit to it. I don't know if that's making sense, but it's really just committing full force to whatever it is decided to do, whether, again, a huge goal or just something small like the one I just mentioned. For
sure. And so I think when we talk about massive action, one important step for that is really getting clear on your priorities, on what exactly you're trying to actually achieve in your life, right? Because we all have like these differing priorities, right? And oftentimes I think that can get in the way of actually achieving the goals that truly matter in our lives. So what do you suggest with people that kind of trying to like you said, dabble in so many different fields, but haven't really mastered anything?
Yeah, again, another great question. I think, and I'm probably the perfect example of that, where I've dabbled in so many things, and it's it's not just, if you feel like got too many things going in your life, that's universal. That's not just you. So everybody feels that way, because we do, you'll have family at some point, if you don't already, not you, but I mean, in general, the audience, if you don't have family, or either you have family or you probably will at some point. So you'll always have different commitments and different things you're going to have to do. But I think, what I try to do is I try to take one or maybe two things at most and really focus on those at a time. Typically one thing is really the way to go. There's always that, the word focus, right, is follow one course until success. Yeah. And I think no matter how much people think they can multitask and, we live in a multitasking world, I really feel like you have to take, again, one, maybe two things, but I really think one thing at most, and just focus on it until you get to some level of, achievement in that area. And you could cycle, every month you can maybe work on something different. If that's what it requires, you can work on, take a quarter, take a year, take a couple of years, whatever it takes to kind of get that thing to the next level. Again, I mentioned this dance thing. To me, I'm not looking to be like a high level dancer. So to me, it's like about 6 months is probably what I need to focus on this thing. So I've set out, hey, for the next 6 months, I'm really going to put a required amount of time and effort into this thing to get it to where I want it to be. So yeah, I think I think people get mistaken with the multitasking idea, and they think they can do everything at one time. And I trust me, I've been there and done. I think, I can do it all at one time. You really can't, and you have to just carve out time and really focus on, again, most likely one thing, and get it to a certain point until you move on to the next thing.
I love this idea of really taking the time for one thing and focusing like on that for maybe a few weeks or months, and really diving deep into that, and then only moving on once you've mastered that. Because I think the challenge most of us have is we try to master 5 things at the same time and then achieve none of them. So I love this idea of, hey, this month I'm going to focus on this, and the next month I'm going to focus on that, and kind of like sequentially like working on those.
Right. And I think to truly master something, it usually takes 10 years, but you don't even have to master. You have to just get it to a certain level, right? So to me, like fitness, I've always, had trouble kind of, regularly going to the gym. And about 2 years ago, I decided to do what I call a 30-day challenge. And that was what I wrote my second book about, 30 Days Awesome. And really within 30 days, I was able to get to the point where I felt like I wasn't, didn't get to my ultimate fitness goals, but I was able to, what it did was, first of all, I did get some gains in 30 days. Second, I just kind of felt comfortable going to the gym. I got in the routine of, hey, I just go to the gym every day. It changed my mentality from a person who going to the gym, feel comfortable there. And all these guys, they can lift more weight than me. And I just, you kind of have all those thoughts. Versus after 30 days, I kind of belong here. I made some friends. I've enjoyed going to the gym. So even though I didn't accomplish my goals or become a master in 30 days, it really kind of jump-started me to where now for the years, I've been pretty much working out on a regular basis. And, again, fitness to me is like a lifelong commitment. It's not like you do something, achieve a goal, and you move on. But I think if you can take whatever that is, like a month, 3 months, a year, whatever it is, to get to a certain level, then it kind of becomes part of you and part of your lifestyle. You can continue it versus, if you just, like you said, trying to do 5 things at one time, you'll get nowhere.
Oh, so true. So tell me a little bit more about that 30-day challenge. So what was your goal like initially when you first went to the gym? Was it like, I'm just going to go there and show up, or did you set any specific goals? Like, how do you do that mechanistically?
Oh yeah, I'm a strong believer in the 30-day challenge. I've used it in different areas in my life. I think it's, again, I go through a lot of detail in my book. In fact, a guy who was just reading my book emailed me yesterday. He said he's going to start his first 30-day challenge, and I said, good luck, because it really is. If you really do it, it to me, it's a life changer. That's why I believe in it. I wrote a book about it. But I guess the basic ideas or rules are, first of all, do whatever you're doing, do it for 30 days in a row, every single day. And there's something magical about doing it every day that just kind of it becomes part of you. So I think there's like a couple of different things you get out of a 30-day challenge. Number one is whatever area, whether it's dance or going to the gym or writing a book or starting a podcast or whatever it is that you're trying to accomplish, working on it or doing it every day for 30 days. The first thing you're going to gain is you're going to gain some sort of results. You almost can't do something for 30 days in a row and not be better at it at the end of 30 days. And the other, I think the biggest thing that I think people will gain, that I gained out of 30-day challenge, is a mental shift. Again, using the gym example, to me, I was always kind of like, I was a little awkward going to the gym. I didn't feel like I fit in. All these guys with the big muscles, and you're like, I don't know if I really want to go there. But after 30 days of doing it, you feel like you belong. And I think the mental shift was bigger than the physical shift to my muscles. I don't think my muscles were that much bigger in 30 days. And again, using the dance example, I think to me, I haven't actually done a 30-day challenge with the dance, but I think now that I'm thinking about it, that's probably what I need to do exactly. It's just, again, I feel comfortable. You see what I'm saying? That's the biggest thing, is not just feeling awkward of, oh God, I'm on the dance floor and everyone's looking at me and, I really am bad at that. I don't know where to put my feet. That goes away. And then once that goes away, then now you can open up and really become better at it. So I think, number one, again, a 30-day challenge, you will make gains in 30 days, but I don't think that's the biggest thing you get out of it. In 30 days, you can be better at something, but you're not going to be a master in 30 days. But the mental shift that occurs, and that's what I found. Another thing I talk about in my book with the 30-day challenge is, I was never really good at talking to strangers, or I was a little bit socially awkward. Maybe like you're always like, I don't know if I should talk to that person. And so I did a 30-day challenge of just talking to people. And it changed my life, because now I feel so comfortable just walking up to anybody, and just saying, oh, hey, what's up? Or if I have an interest in talking to them. So again, after 30 days, it wasn't like I was a great conversationalist, but it just got that mental thing out of my head. It was a mental shift that occurred. So those are like 3 examples of where, one of the biggest, probably the biggest thing you get out of a 30-day challenge is the mental shift you're going to get. And you're going to feel like, oh, this is what I do now, and it's not a big deal anymore. So hopefully that makes sense, but that's really what I feel like is the biggest thing you get out of a 30-day challenge.
Oh, I love that. And one of the most interesting research findings in psychology also is this kind of idea of just get started, like just overcoming like the first little bit of inertia, the first little fears and doubts and insecurities. And once you're moving, once you're like putting in the work, once you're going to the gym every day, even if it's just for 5 minutes, once you're talking to strangers, once you're running just for like half a mile a day, at that point, it becomes so much easier to keep going and going with it, right? So I love what you're saying here of really setting those challenges and then just dedicating myself to, hey, every single day I'm going to do a little bit. And it doesn't have to be huge in the beginning, right? It's just about performing it over and over and over again. So I love that, what you're saying here.
Yeah, you can even set the bar. I mean, there's a book called Mini Habits. I don't know if you've heard of that book. I can't remember, but he talks. It's a great book, because even if you're having trouble with that inertia, like you said, and you just have this kind of the force that's pushing you away from going to the gym, you can set your 30-day challenge just showing up to the gym every day for 30 days. That itself will make you move forward, even if you don't lift a weight, which the thing is, once you get to the gym, you'll probably do something. But a lot of what I do is usually when I go to the gym, I want to do about 6 different exercises. This is my typical routine, 3 sets of 6. So it's not like, I don't work out for 4 hours. It's like about a 45-minute workout at best. But even on days when I don't feel like going to the gym, what I tell myself is, hey, just getting there and even doing 1 or 2 different exercises is success. That way I don't feel like I don't feel like a failure if I've not gone, because honestly, every day you're not going to be like, yeah, I want to go to the gym and I'm pumped. And there's going to be days where you're tired, you slept late or something like that. So I think, lowering the bar a little bit, and letting yourself be okay with just showing up at the gym, or just going there and doing 2 exercises instead of 6, a very great mindset to have that'll keep the momentum going instead of kill you dead in your tracks. I used to be, until I read Mini Habits, I was the kind of person like, if I don't go to the gym, I don't do my 6 exercises, I'm a failure today, And but I'm like, it's okay. Do for whatever you can do that day, but just keep going every day, because over time that's going to show the results that you really want. So a great point you made, and I think if anybody has read that book, that's another great book I think to really read.
Oh, for sure, I love that. And sometimes with my coaching clients, I put in this concept of kind of minimum effort, right? Like, what is the minimum thing that you can achieve every day? And sometimes for people when they're starting to run, for example, I tell them, run from 1 minute today, right? Like just 1 minute. If you can run more, if you can run for 2 or 3 minutes, that's great. But run at least 1 minute. And by doing that, first of all, you get this excitement because you're winning every day, right? Like you're getting these small wins. And then secondly, once you've run for a minute, most of the times it's actually easier to keep going than once you've actually started, rather than having to convince myself, oh, today I have to run this really painful, like 4-minute run or 4-mile run or whatever it is for you, right? So just getting yourself out there is so powerful.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. That again, that's what he talks about in that Mini Habits book. But it's so just get there and start. I think again, I'm sure people who've gone to the gym, you've experienced that, where it's like, God, you're just like, I do not want to go to the gym. It's the last thing I want to do. But as soon as you get there and you start working out, you're like, oh, I actually want to keep going. You know, you end up doing your whole workout, even though you kind of felt like not even working out. So no, I agree. I think it's kind of a double-edged sword. You don't want to just every day set the bar so low, but I think don't beat yourself up if you don't do it perfectly in every single thing you set out to do that day. It's okay. And even if you do 50% or 25%, you know what? There'll be tomorrow, and you'll at least keep the momentum going instead of like crushing your momentum and you know, stop quitting the thing entirely.
Oh, for sure. And so you mentioned before inner belief, right? Like developing those rock solid inner core beliefs. So what does that look like mechanistically if someone wants to really develop in themselves this belief that they can achieve whatever they set out to do?
Right. No, another great question. I think I call it rock solid inner core belief. And I think that's another incredible or very important mindset that you have to be successful at anything at a high level. And what I mean by that is, you think about it, you know, if I say, you know, hey, Max, you think you get, you know, I don't know if I don't want to use, maybe I shouldn't use you as an example. Hey, you know, Joe, if you think you're going to make $10 million, and Joe looks at me and says, you know, I think I can do it, but I'm not really sure. That's kind of what I call stage belief. Stage one belief is disbelief. So if you're a stage, if I say, hey, you know, you're going to make $10 million, and someone says no, I'm like, hey, well, that's pretty easy to understand, right? They don't believe they can do it. They're not going to happen. The difficulty is actually stage two belief. When people they kind of outwardly say they're going to do it, but internally they don't really believe it. And I'll be honest, back when we were talking about when I was in New York as an actor, I think I didn't have rock solid inner core belief. I didn't think I could really do this. And probably why psychologically I found a reason not to do it. No, I got to go make money. I got to go medicine. I found some excuse. And if you think about it, if I say like, hey, Max, or you ask me, hey, Sunil, can you go out to Starbucks, and we're having a meeting in about an hour, go out to Starbucks and get coffee for everybody. I will pretty much instantly, sure, no problem. Because if you think about it, I have rock solid inner core belief around that concept of, you know what, I can go to Starbucks right now, order the coffee, and bring it back for the meeting. I have no doubt in my mind I can do that. So if you think about it, people with true rock solid inner core belief, they don't brag. They're not arrogant. They're not like, yeah, I can do this. I'm awesome. They're just like, sure, I can do this. You know, it's almost like an assumed thing. And the biggest example I give, which I think I give in the book as well, is Muhammad Ali. I mean, he just always had rock solid inner core belief around everything he was going to do. And I think that's why he was probably not the best boxer ever, but one of the people we will remember forever, because he always kind of had that kind of just, yeah, I'm going to get this done. No matter what, this is going to happen. And so I don't know, again, I'm not sure if I'm explaining it properly, but I think, you know, there's three stages of belief. Stage one is disbelief, which is pretty easy to understand. Stage two is kind of this, like what I call false belief, where people will either outwardly prove that they believe something, and they also can convince yourself. You know, you can also sometimes you convince yourself like, yeah, I can do this, no problem. But deep down inside, do you really believe that you can do it? And I think if you don't have that rock solid inner core belief, you need to develop it, especially for the high level goals, because they can be very demanding and challenging and take many years to accomplish. So yeah, I think that's a very important concept that I try to, you know, get across to everybody. And I struggle with it too. I'm telling you, it's tough sometimes when you're trying to accomplish something and it's a big goal, and it can feel overwhelming, and that belief can kind of go away. But I think you have to maintain it to be successful.
So if someone is stuck in the stage two belief, like you say, where they want to believe in it, but they don't really like deep down believe that they're going to succeed, how can we move them like mechanistically? Like what can they do or say to themselves to move to that stage three where they have that certainty that they're going to succeed?
Right. It's difficult. I can tell you, it's not like something you can just like, you know, flip a switch and all of a sudden you rock solid inner core belief. I think as kind of hokey as they can be, sometimes like affirmations really help. I think if you just keep affirming that I will get this done, this will happen, I think that really helps. I think some, so that's number one. I think getting experience and some positive experiences around that belief will happen, or that will actually allow you to build this rock solid inner core belief. Again, you know, with the dance thing that I'm doing right now, I took a couple lessons and I'm starting to get a few things, and it's starting to actually, I'm like, wow, I can actually do this. So now I've got what I call positive reference experience of, hey, I'm actually maybe not that bad at this. And now it's starting to build that rock solid inner core belief in me. So I think those are two things right there, is just literally affirmation, which I think when I first heard of affirmations, I thought they were like just completely hokey, but you know what? They actually work. And then number two is just putting the work in and actually starting to get some positive results out of it. And then you'll start building that. You'll be like, wow, I can actually do this. I'm not as bad as I think. That type of thing.
I love that, especially the point about this positive reference point, because I think one of the things that's often overlooked in when people try to get more confident is they forget that to be confident, you actually have to develop a skill set. You actually have to be good at something in order to feel confident, right? Because if you're just trying to tell yourself all the time, I'm so awesome, I'm so great, but you don't actually do anything. All you're doing is, research has shown that over the last few decades, is all you're doing is you're building those narcissists and sociopaths, right? They think they're the most amazing people in the world when actually they haven't done anything. And so I love what you're saying about being like kind of creating those positive reference points of, hey, I've done this successfully and I've done that successfully, so now I can succeed at the next thing.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I think it's a combination of both. Exactly. You can't. I think there's some people who are. They have probably false belief. They go around thinking they can do stuff and they're really bad at it. So I've seen that a lot. And there's people who are actually really good at stuff, but they don't believe they're good at it at all. So it's really both. It's like you have to really have that almost like it's almost having like I think your confidence should be a little ahead of your abilities. You know, you should always have that like, yeah, I'm a little better than I think I am or that I really am probably, but not way too. If you're like so far. If your confidence is so far ahead of what your real skill set it is, then yeah, that's also like you're saying, narcissist or some kind of it's a pattern for long-term disaster is what it really is. But yeah, I think you have to both. You have to have the true confidence, but also the true goods to back it up, and they kind of they go hand in hand, right? If you start, if you're trying to play tennis and all of a sudden you can start hitting shots and things are going well, and you start beat some other players. Then yeah, you're going to develop confidence in this world inner core belief just by the fact that you're getting results. So I think it's both. You have to work on both.
I love that. So Sunil, do you have a favorite failure in your life? Do you have any time where you failed at first, but then that set you up for later success?
Yeah, I mean, many times. I think I honestly probably fail, on a daily, monthly basis. There's something I do. I'm like, oh man, I shouldn't have done that. But again, I think the most important thing is not to fail, but to just make sure you take it as experience and a learning process. Probably the restaurant business was my, I guess, quote unquote, biggest failure. And I just kind of got in way over my head and it was a financial failure, all kinds of stuff. But yeah, I just look back now. I learned so much what not to do in the next business that's, I'm sure, why I was successful in many, many other businesses. So I think any failure, whether big or small, as long as you view it properly, can be extremely valuable.
Love that. So over the last 5 years, what new belief, behavior, habit has changed your life the most?
Probably that concept of Dharma, in terms of real understanding that I feel that everybody on this planet was put on this planet for some reason. And it comes from, it's part of it is genetic, like your DNA, but also part of it is your upbringing influences. So at some point you become a person who now you have a purpose or a mission in the world. And I think I did the same thing. I ignored it for 40 years. I just thought, oh, this is really good. Let's go do this business. Oh, that's really, let's go do this. Oh, this looks cool. Let's go do that, without really taking a stack and saying, what is it that Sunil is supposed to be doing, and really taking the time to discover that. And once I did that, now I feel so, it's like you feel like you're with your people, or, I'm saying? Like, you feel like you're at home finally, like everything's making sense. Like, this is what I was supposed to do. I get it now. So I think that's probably the biggest, most powerful, life-changing thing for me in the last 5 years is once I discovered that, I don't feel lost and like, what should I do with my life? And nothing is really fulfilling. I feel very fulfilled. And like, I feel very clear about what I should be doing.
So what do you think holds people back from living an insanely awesome life?
I think it's that really bad 4-letter word that starts with an F. It's called fear. That I think the word fear or fear has probably crushed more dreams than anything in the history of humanity. It's fear, man. It's just fear of, sometimes, a true fear, meaning there is real risk over there on the other side. But I'd say 90% of the time it's just false fear, where people think, that's what fear stands for, right? False evidence appearing real. So I think when you're afraid of something, and if you do it, you realize, wow, I was even afraid of this. It wasn't even that big of a deal. So I think it's fear of failure, fear of rejection, fear of what other people will think. Yeah, you mentioned with medicine. I think a lot of colleagues I had in medicine don't leave medicine because of the fear of what will my neighbors think? What will my family think? What will my parents think if I'm a doctor and now I'm not a doctor anymore? One of the biggest things I struggled with when I first left medicine was that when you're in medicine, everybody calls you doctor, right? Hey, Dr. Saxena, doctor. It's just you're used to being called Dr. Saxena. And the first couple of months when you're not working anymore, you're like, should I be being called doctor? Am I not a doctor anymore? What am I? So it's just like a change in your like being, like who you are, right? And now like nobody calls me doctor anymore. I just, I go by Sunil. So I think just that fear of what the other side will be is probably absolutely the biggest thing that holds people back. And, I think you have to be able to figure that out and deal with it if you're going to try to make some kind of shift or change in your life, or if you want to get to the next level.
So why do you think you were able to make that shift and jump into a new career when so many people, like you mentioned, are stuck in those jobs, like medical doctors being stuck in this job forever just because they're so afraid? So why did you make that jump and other people didn't?
I think it's just a mindset of not settling. I think, people settle for jobs that they really don't like. People settle for relationships they don't really like. People settle for food they don't really like. And I guess I'm just a person who's like, you know what, I'm willing to, because I'll be honest with you, it's not, like I always tell my kids, like I could have a pretty easy life right now. I could be working as a doctor, making, a couple $100,000, working not that hard. I mean, I'll still work hard, but very easy, predictable set lifestyle. Being an entrepreneur that I do, honestly, there's a lot of 3 a.m. I wake up like, oh my God, how's this going to work out? Am I going to be able to make money? Is this deal going to work? That kind of stuff. So it's a lot of turbulence. I think taking not an easy, but a well-traveled path in life is like drive car down the highway at like 70 miles an hour. A nice highway. Pay you guys. You're in Germany, right? You have autobahns, right?
Yeah, we go all out.
You go like 125. So in America, we get put in jail for going 125 miles an hour. Yeah. So I've never been to Germany, but I hope to someday and drive on the autobahns. But all I can is just a smooth road where you can just go as fast as you want, right? Versus if you're trying to do follow your dreams, sometimes it's like turbulence. It's like being in an airplane where the airplane is going around. It's like you're like, oh, am I going to die? And Tony Robbins says it perfectly. Your ceiling on achievement is based on the amount of uncertainty you can deal with in life. So if you're a kind of person who just can't deal with uncertainty, then you're going to need to stick with something that's proven. And your ceiling is going to be pretty limited, because if it's a proven path, everybody's already done it and you just can't achieve great things. Versus if you can train yourself or accept more uncertainty in life, your ceiling all of a sudden went up. And I think that's something that people have to make a decision for themselves. If, I don't know if you can put dealing with uncertainty on a scale and say, okay, 1 is like a person who can't deal with uncertainty at all, and a 10 is a person who can deal with any kind of uncertainty. Wherever you are a 3, if you can move yourself up to a 4 or a 5, I think all of a sudden you've increased your ceiling of potential in life. And so I think that's one thing to, again, some people will be like, I'll screw it up with a certain life. That's fine. But if you can deal with more uncertainty, I think that'll improve what you can do, or like give you the ability to do more things.
Well, I love that way of looking at it, of like raising the ceiling on the level of uncertainty they're able to deal with. Love that. So before I ask my final question, where can people connect with you online?
Yeah, you can. My speaking website is www.saxenaspeaks.com. That's my speaker website, and then insanelyawesome.com is my my blog website. So if you want to hear more of me speaking, check it out. And of course, I have my 2 books on Amazon: Massive Action Equals Massive Results, and 30 Days to Awesome. So if you want to check those out, they're on Amazon right now. And I have the Kindle audiobook and hardcover, or not hardcover, but softcover version. So whatever format you like, they're out there.
Awesome. So my final question is, what does mental mastery mean to you?
Mental mastery. I think another great question. Wow. I think first of all, again, step 1 is really figure out your Dharma. I think to master yourself mentally, you have to figure out why you were put in this earth. So I think that's always step 1. But I think step 2 is really what I call mental mind frames. Really, again, like failure. Like, how do you look at failure? That's one example of a mental mind frame. Are you going to look at it as a positive or a negative? So I think once you've understood yourself, which is one of the biggest battles in life, I think, is to figure out who you really are. And then you've put the right mental mind frames into place, that's when you can get mental mastery.
Awesome. Love that. Well, thank you so much for coming on the show. And thank you to everyone who tuned in to today's episode of Mental Mastery. Tune in daily for new episodes on how you can achieve mental mastery and live a happy and successful life. And if you would like a little extra push, head over to my website maxweigand.com for a free ebook on mastering self-discipline and willpower. There, you can also sign up for my one-on-one habit coaching program where I help you master your habits and achieve your goals. Also, if you like this interview, feel free to rate and review the show. Until next time,